Hello and welcome to the Rosewood. Today we're recapping January. Hello. So it's midway through February. I hoped to have this video out the first week of February, but honestly I haven't slept very much this month, so that didn't happen. But we're here now, and that's what matters. Today we're just going to go through my January and kind of do the little update that I got for you and give you a little update on how it went and how it didn't go. First of all, what did I focus on in January? January's main focus, especially for the first 2 months, was finishing revisions for Love Me Not, because I was planning on sending it out to beta readers on the 15th, and I did that. However, I did end up, Love Me Not was originally supposed to be a standalone, and then when I got halfway through revisions, which I do have a vlog for, and I promise it'll be coming soon, when I got halfway through my revisions, I realized that I was already at 96,000 words, and I still had probably another 100K or more to go for the rest of the story, and I hadn't even fully updated the first part of the book yet. So I made the decision to split the book into two. It is now a duet. I'm really, really excited though. Love Me Not is my debut Omegaverse, following Daphne Barnes and Omega, who just left her pack of 8 years after realizing they couldn't really give a fuck about her. However, 10 months later, they're still causing chaos in her life, and it's just a reminder that she's very much not interested in packing up again. So, of course, she goes into an unexpected heat in a fabric store and meets a sympathetic alpha for the first time. Nate and the rest of Pack Morgan offer to help her through her heat, but when it's over, they aren't willing to let her go. However, Daphne's not sure she's ready to pack up again, now or ever. Love Me Not Part 1 comes out April 24th. It is my debut. I am genuinely so thrilled. The story is wonderful, and I've just been having a great time. And beta readers are loving it, but that is going to be a whole other video. But that was my main priority, and my main focus for January was getting Love Me Not revised enough to send to betas. And for that first half of the book, for that first half of the story, that's done. It is revised, and it is with betas. Currently, I'm actually about to get it back at the end of the week. So, very excited. The latter half of the month focused on client work and Bonding the Crown, which is an Omegaverse release that I am doing in a shared series in October. So that comes out October 7th. I'll talk more about that at a later date, but I was trying to get that done. However, I only worked on it for a couple of days, and it's just not, I realized I just couldn't write it. I've been trying for the last 2 weeks, and it just took me until earlier today to realize that because I'm in this weird sort of stasis moment with Love Me Not, where I am actively waiting for it to come back from beta readers so that I can continue working on it before release in a few months. In 2 months. Writing another Omegaverse story just is not working. My brain is currently occupied with one Omegaverse story, and that is it. So while I have the ability to write in that whenever I want, it's probably going to have to wait until Love Me Not Part 1 is completely finished and ready for publication. And then I can take 2 weeks and draft the novella and draft Bonding the Crown, because it is a novella. It's only going to be like 30K. But I did try. I did try to do Bonding the Crown, and I did a lot of client work, which seems like the end of my month always has a ton of client work, and the beginning not so much. So that's okay. It is what it is. But let's look at the word count spreadsheet really quick. I'm going to pop up a screenshot for you right here. This is just my main page because it makes a lot more sense. But my goal for the month was 35,000, because that's always my goal. Because that's like my least amount of words written typically. I rarely ever go below 30K. Sometimes I do, if it's like a really bad month, but like then it's a really bad month. So I kind of figured I would do 30K, especially with having revisions to do. I knew I was going to do that. I ended up doing 59,157 words. I would like to have a caveat. As always, you'll find that I'm the caveat queen. I am a professional writer. That is my job. My job is to write. I was a ghostwriter for a few years. I'm still technically a ghostwriter, I guess. I do client outlines, so I outline people's novels, and I write for myself. I am a career writer, which means I have worked hard to learn how to write large numbers. And this is not terribly, terribly large for a lot of full-time authors. But if yours is less, that is okay. Do not look at this and be like, oh, I'm the worst because I can't write this. Whatever you write is what you can write, and that's okay. I have worked very hard to up my word count, but even before I did that, I've always been a very fast writer, and I've always written too fucking much. So that's why my book is now 2 books, okay? Also because I'm a giant child and I can't get rid of my darlings. It's just how we are. With that being said, we can move on. So my word count was 24,000 more than I expected, which is lovely. We love to see that. Minutes written is a little over 3,000, which is awesome. Again, that's just sprinting. Some of these tallies, which is why we're using the main page and not my monthly page, some of these tallies I just wrote in exactly what it was from Scrivener or a notepad or whatever, because I didn't track the sprints, because I didn't have sprints. I don't always sprint, and so it's important to know I try to track minutes written as much as possible, but I don't always do it. Chapters written, again, this is going to look insane, but I wrote 70 chapters. Again, I finished a client outline, and those client outlines are about 50 chapters. So in reality, I wrote about 20 chapters for my projects, but those client chapters are very small. They're like a couple hundred words each, nothing crazy. Daily average word count is 1,900. But that obviously tracks the days that I didn't write at all. So there we go. It's probably not going to be on the screenshot because I haven't figured out the right formula for it, but I did write 16 days out of the 31, which is pretty insane. And it's why I've done pretty much nothing for the last 2 weeks because I am fucking exhausted. So that's that update. And then I did write some notes for myself about January and how it went, personally speaking. So, what worked and what didn't? What worked was letting myself sleep in. I found that I worked better on days that I didn't stress about my start time. Again, I was working pretty much around the clock for the first 2 weeks of January because I was trying so hard to get Love Me Not ready for beta readers. And again, I thought I was only halfway through this full ass book and I was terrified that I wasn't going to get it done in time. So I was working all the time. But letting myself sleep in a little bit here and there, that really did help. I am not a morning person. I work best when I start work at like 10 a.m., which it's 11 a.m. right now. I'm not a morning person, and my brain, I found that if I woke up early, I would just sit at the computer and just stare all day. It just was not my thing. So letting myself sleep in was very, very vital to my mental health and to my work productivity for the month. So we're going to continue that next month. Also, less social media. So we're talking about January 2025. The occupation of the United States began, and it was a lot. The first week I did very little because I was very overwhelmed and very upset a lot of the time. So it took me a very short period of time to realize that social media was something I could not do in the morning, and it was not something I could do during the workday. If I pulled up Instagram and saw a new news feed from one of the the news outlets that I specifically trust, it would ruin my productivity for the rest of the day. My mental health, I couldn't do it. So my mental health is so much better now that I'm not using social media all the time, which I knew would happen, again, especially with things going on in the world, but it just became even more necessary. I give myself like 30 minutes after I'm done working to check in on the world and see what's going on, and then maybe like an hour or so after my daughter goes to bed. But to be honest, I try not to use my phone much after she goes to bed anyways, because it's the best thing for my sleep health to not do that. So restricting social media, definitely continuing. And then third thing that worked is socializing. We left the house a lot. I saw my friends a lot more. I got on more group chats and video chats and just like was just very present with the people that I love, and that was really helpful, especially when I like went to the library, which I rarely ever leave my house in general, especially because it's winter and I drive a Hot Wheels essentially. So it's not always safe for me to leave my house. and I don't do well in the cold. It makes my chronic illness stuff much, much worse. But like going to the library or a cafe for a bit just to like doodle in a notebook or just kind of like stream of consciousness write was really, really helpful. And again, I'm in a much better mood when I do that and I like leave my house. So definitely going to do that. All right. What didn't work and how I'm fixing it for February. So first and foremost, finishing an entire client outline in a week. That didn't work at all. I needed to do it because I needed the money, but it was too much and I burned out really hard. I like couldn't do anything for like a week after. So I ended up reaching out to my client and just letting them know like, hey, this process you have going right now is not working for me. I'm getting paid once a month, which is the whole reason I like rushed that outline. Rushed through it. I didn't rush the actual process. But I just let them know like we need to figure something out. This is not sustainable. And we came to the table and we did come to a very satisfactory agreement. So I'm now at the stage where I'm only doing one outline a month, and that one outline, because my rate got upped quite a bit, is all that I need to support my household completely for the month. So that's wonderful. It means that I can be a lot slower. It does mean they want a couple more like personal checks on my point on like my, what is the word? They want me to do more checks and like more revisions of the project before it comes to them, which I'm totally fine with. But yeah, loved that. Loved that. Big fan of that. And I'm very excited to see how in the next few months, as we kind of like get used to this process and this timeline, how that works for my productivity, especially with personal stuff. Next one is lack of movement. I had a foot issue and I couldn't use my treadmill as much. My body definitely suffered in January. So the goal for February has been to commit to yoga every day with a friend of mine, and potentially as my foot gets better, it's not better yet, but it's definitely getting there. To definitely get some more steps in and just have a little bit more movement. Again, we're halfway through February right now, and spoiler alert, it's still not healed, so I'm not getting a ton of movement in, and my body is definitely hurting for it. And I think that's probably why my sleep has been absolute garbage too. Fingers crossed it gets fixed soon. Okay, this is a big one. Tracking time versus word sprints. I draft in word sprints because I'm a fast drafter, and I'm intentionally fast because my attention span is not very long. And if I don't finish a draft before my attention span drops, it's very, very hard for me to continue. It is pulling fucking teeth. So I try to fast draft as much as possible to get through that first initial draft, and then I can fix it in revisions. And that works in drafting. But for editing, it's different. So when I'm editing, I don't do sprints. I will just set a stopwatch on my phone and just like let myself get lost in the prose. And that works really well. But again, it was the difference between trying to writing sprint while I was editing and trying to like let myself get lost in the prose while I was drafting. And that just doesn't work. So I need to do 15-minute sprints for drafting, especially if I'm doing it in the Discord group that I'm in, because that like rush of competition kind of gets me to move forward. But if I'm editing, I don't want to restrict myself to time because it doesn't actually help. So just understanding that like fundamental difference between editing brain and writing brain for me was something I struggled with in January. Oof. Next one. Not having my bullet journal planned out in advance. And I don't mean like every day planned out. I mean not even having it set up in advance was so hard. I forgot so much shit because it just was not there. I really needed it done. I need to be able to write it down in that bullet journal. That placement fixes whatever it is in my brain so that I'm more likely to remember it. My daughter had quite a few days off of school where I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're supposed to be at school right now. And she's like, no, ma'am, we have a no school day. And I hadn't planned for it because I didn't know. So I fixed that. I went ahead and planned my bullet journal for, I think, until like March. And I'm planning to do 1 to 2 months at least in advance just to have it set up. Big dates on there so that I know what I'm doing and I can look at the future and kind of know what's coming. This is what most people would do in like a normal planner, but I just don't utilize normal planners the way that I use my bullet journal. So I just need to make sure that I'm like a quarter ahead when it comes to setting up the journal itself, so that I can continue to use it as needed. And the last thing that did not work for me in January, this is going to be a little controversial, I think. Working Mondays. Before January, I didn't really work Mondays because I realized that I needed them to rest and recover from my weekends, and they were typically my planning days, marketing planning, whatever, answering emails, reading, just kind of like recovering from my weekend and working into my week. I work best when I work 4-day weeks. My productivity is just much better. But again, I was rushing through January because I was trying to get revisions done, and I was trying to draft Bonnie the Crown, and I was trying to get this fucking client outline done in like a week. So I was working around the clock in January, and that was not a thing. And so Mondays especially, it did not work. So my productivity really suffered for it. I work best if I have a long 4-day weekend, a long 4-day work week, because I'm just much more productive than I am if I'm working a 5-day work week. So I'm no longer working Mondays. That's going to be that means I'm going to be planning my weekly schedules to avoid a Monday start. It means like Thursday through Friday are going to be very busy, but that works a lot better for my brain anyways. It's typically why I prefer to have therapy on Mondays, because I don't do a lot of like mental heavy lifting on Mondays. It's a lot of ideation, a lot of thinking about what's going on. And like it's a lot of ideation and intellection. So thinking about what's going on, making up new ideas for the stories. It's a lot of refilling my well after pretty much draining it dry every weekend, because if you're a single parent, it's non-fucking stop. And so that's really what I'm focusing on, is just not giving myself that time to mentally rest alone without my daughter home on Mondays. As much as I can, because once school is over, she'll be home all day, and then we're just kind of like on 3 months of burnout notice. It's going to be insane. But for right now, that's the goal. I'm planning my weeks to avoid a Monday start with like, and that is specifically, and I will say that's not to say I don't work on Mondays. So Mondays are like video editing days or filming days or marketing days. I spent last Monday on Canva, and that was a joy. I loved that, because that's something creative that's connected to my stories but isn't necessarily writing. I think last week I did marketing, like Instagram posts for a month and the marketing calendar, but I also worked on like character art for the first time in months, and that was so nice. So just working on stuff that's not writing but is related to my book on Mondays is very, very helpful, and I'm going to continue that into February and beyond because I need it. That's the January update. Like I said, lots of good stuff happened. I snuck a couple of peeks at my beta feedback, and everyone's really liking it. I've had really great emails, and I'm getting a lot of marketing plans done for the release and kind of figuring out how I want to market beyond that. So all in all, it was a really good January. I definitely needed more rest time, and I needed time to recover after working way too fucking much for the 6 weeks prior. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more cognizant of what my body needs and what my brain needs when it comes to rest and productivity and creativity. And we're just going to kind of go from there in February and beyond. That's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.